The chains were never just iron. They were days that blurred into nights, years that stretched without end, and a silence so heavy it pressed on my chest until I forgot the sound of my own laughter. I was not born with chains, but I was born into them. And from my very first memory, I knew they would not let me go. My mistress liked to remind me of that fact. Every morning, her voice cut sharper than the comb she forced into my hands. "Hold steady," she would snap, sitting high on her stool, while I combed her hair until my fingers ached. She was a woman of lace and silk, but her tongue was made of thorns. If I pulled too hard, she struck. If I worked too slow, she struck again. And if I dared to meet her eye, she smiled the way a cat smiles at a cornered mouse. I learned to keep my gaze low, to move like a shadow, to swallow my anger until it burned in my belly like hot coal. The other slaves told me it was the only way to survive. A breathe and bow, they said, a breathe and bow, but there are only so many bows a neck can take before it snaps. At night, when the house finally slept and I was sent back to the quarters, I would lie awake listening to the wind through the cypress trees. Some nights it howled like wolves, some nights it hissed like snakes, and some nights it whispered, low, strange, and sweet. The others heard nothing but frogs and crickets, but I heard voices. The first time I thought it was my mind cracking under the weight of silence. But then the voice called my name. Not the one the mistress used to spit at me, not the name written on the ledger of her books, but the one my mother had given me before she was sold away. That name, a name I had not heard in years. My body froze, my skin prickled. No one here knew that name. No one had ever dared to speak it aloud. But the swamp knew. "Oh, come closer," it whispered. I pressed my hands to my ears, shaking my head, terrified that someone else would hear, but no one stirred. The quarters were filled with the deep snores of tired bodies, the smell of sweat and damp straw. Yet the whisper curled inside my mind as though it belonged there. The next morning, my mistress scolded me for staring too long into the looking-glass while I combed her hair. But I wasn't staring at her. I was staring past her, at the flicker of shadow, moving in the mirror's edge. It was gone before I could blink, but I knew what I had seen. Something was watching, something that was not bound by chains. I told myself not to believe it, not to feed the madness, but each night the voice returned, stronger, bolder, patient in its calling. "You are not theirs," it whispered, it whispered. "You are mine." One evening, after a day of endless beatings, because the mistress's temper was fouler than usual, I broke. I walked out into the swamp when the others slept, barefoot and shaking. The air was thick, heavy with the smell of moss and rot. The ground sucked at my steps as if the earth itself tried to pull me under. The moonlight barely pierced the branches, and then, all at once, the whisper stopped. The silence was worse. I stood there, knees trembling, wanting to run back but unable to move. Then came the sound of water lapping, though no wind stirred. From the black pool ahead, bubbles rose, slowly, one after another. My breath caught as I saw ripples spread outward, though no stone had fallen, no creature had stirred. "Do you want freedom?" the voice asked. I opened my mouth, but no sound came. My heart pounded so hard it hurt. My hands shook, and still I nodded. The water shivered. A shadow rose just beneath the surface, shapeless but real. It was not man, not beast, not spirit I could name, yet it smiled. And I knew then that chains could be broken, but not without a price. The next morning, I returned to the mistress's chamber with swollen eyes and raw hands. She never noticed. She only barked her orders and thrust her head back for me to work. But as I combed her hair, a single strand broke loose, clinging to my fingers. The whisper brushed my ear. "Keep it." And I did. I pressed that strand into my palm and tucked it away, though I did not yet know why. That night, the voice was clearer than ever. It told me that hair held more than beauty. It held life. It held power. It told me that if I dared to use it, my mistress would learn what it meant to fear. I lay awake long after the voice faded, the strand of hair clenched in my fist. I knew it was dangerous. I knew I should cast it into the fire. But I also knew this was the first time in years I felt something other than chains. Hope. I did not sleep. I only waited for the next whisper. I thought I had only taken a strand of hair. But that hair would lead me down a path I could never turn back from. A path where the dead themselves would answer. The strand of hair burned like a coal in my pocket all day. I felt it even when I tried to ignore it. A tiny weight dragging at my every step. When the mistress barked orders, when her jeweled ring struck across my cheek for combing too slow, when her laughter hissed down the hallways like a curse, I thought of that single strand, hidden against my skin. I should have been afraid of it. Instead, I felt something new. A spark. A spark. That night, when the house sank into uneasy silence, I slipped from my pallet and crept into the dark. The moon was thin, the swamp still, the air pressed heavy, clinging to my skin, thick with the smell of mud and decay. I went back to the same pool where the water had spoken. My hand shook as I pulled the strand of hair from my pocket. It gleamed pale in the moonlight, fine and fragile, yet alive in some way I could not name. "What do?" I whispered. My voice cracked. It felt foolish to speak to the night, but the night answered. "Drop it." The voice breathed close as my own breath. I let the hair slip from my fingers. It floated on the black water, spreading slowly. Ripples curled outward. The surface shimmered, as though the stars had sunk down to watch. Then came a sound I will never forget. A low moan rising from beneath the swamp, long and hollow like the earth itself exhaling. My body stiffened, my knees nearly gave out. The water swirled, the hair sank, and from the darkness below, a second voice rose. Not the soft whisper that had called me before. This one was jagged, raw, like claws raking across stone. "As she hears me," it said. My heart lurched. "Who?" I asked, though I already knew. The swamp bubbled, the sound thick and wet. But the one who strikes you, the one who thinks she owns you. "She hears me when she sleeps. Tonight I will speak through her dreams." I staggered back, shaking my head. "No," I whispered. "She'll know it was me. The water hissed. "She will not know, but she will fear. And her fear will feed me. Feed us." I clutched my chest, struggling to breathe. Part of me wanted to run, to cast myself into the dark trees and never return. But another part, a part I had buried so deep I thought it dead, wanted to see her afraid, wanted to see her eyes wide with the same helpless terror I carried every day. So I stayed. That night, the house trembled with sounds I could not explain. The mistress's chamber door slammed, though no wind blew. Her mirror cracked down the center with a shriek like breaking glass, and from her room, muffled but clear, came her scream. I froze in my corner of the quarters, the other slaves stirring awake in fear. No one dared move. No one dared speak. The mistress screamed again, then fell silent. The house groaned, settling back into its bones. When dawn came, she emerged pale as chalk, eyes hollow, lips trembling, though her voice stayed sharp. She struck me again that morning, harder than ever, her hands shaking as she did. "You," she hissed, "your hands are cursed. You pulled a comb like claws." I bowed my head, but inside, I burned. She was frightened. I saw it in the twitch of her jaw, the crack of her voice. She was unraveling. That night, I crept again to the swamp. My breath fogged in the cool air. The sweat slicked my palms. "You did it," I whispered. The water rippled. "She dreams of me still. Each night she will see more. Do you wish her broken?" The question sliced through me. Did I? The girl who once combed hair in silence would have whispered yes without hesitation. But now, with the weight of the swamp pressing against me, the answer twisted, because I knew this path would not stop at her fear. It would go further. It would demand more, yet I could not turn back. "Yes," I whispered. My voice shook, but the swamp did not care. The ripples spread wide, black waves folding into the night. "Then give me more." Hair was the key. But ash is the door. Ash, my mind raced. Ash from the hearth, ash from the fields, or ash from something far older, far darker. I asked no questions aloud, for I feared the answers. I simply nodded. When I returned to the quarters, I found my hands trembling with a hunger I could not name. I touched the hearth when no one was looking, scooping ash into my palm. It clung to my skin, grey and soft, and though it should have been cold, it burned. That night, I placed the ash on the swamp's surface. The water hissed, swallowing it whole. And from the depths I heard her voice, my mistress's voice, though she was not there. "Who's there?" She gasped, muffled and weak. The swamp answered for me. "Oh, we are here." Her scream shattered the silence, and I knew then that this was only the beginning. Curiosity Gap CTA. I thought the whispers only lived in the swamp, but when my mistress woke speaking words she had never learned, I realized the spirits were not bound to the water anymore. They had found their way inside her. Fear spread quick on a plantation. By the second week, every servant knew something was wrong with the mistress. They whispered about her sleepless nights, her sudden fits, her screams that rattled the shutters, even when no one touched her. The cook crossed herself and muttered prayers while stirring the pot. The butler clutched a charm hidden under his shirt, one his mother had given him. No one spoke it plain, but they all felt it. The house was not safe anymore, and I knew why. The swamp had done its work. Yet the voice still pressed at me each night, hungry, commanding, never satisfied. "Ash is the door," it reminded, but the door must be opened wide. I didn't know how. My scraps of hair and ash felt small, clumsy. I had stirred something ancient, but I had no guide. Alone I would stumble into darkness. And darkness does not forgive mistakes. That was when I heard of them, the ones who still remembered. Old Ruth, bent with years, pulled me aside one morning as I carried buckets from the well. Her eyes were cloudy, her back hunched, but her whisper cut sharp. "Good child," she said, "the way you walk ain't your own anymore. You're carrying shadows." I nearly dropped the buckets. "I don't know what you mean," I muttered, though my heart thrashed in my chest. Her lips pressed thin. "Don't lie. I hear the swamp in your steps. If you keep walking blind, it'll swallow you whole. But there are still some who remember how to walk with it instead of under it." That night she led me beyond the quarters, deeper into the trees. The moon hung low, a dull coin, and the air smelled thick of moss. My breath came ragged, each step heavy with dread and hope. We came to a clearing I had never seen before, though I had walked these woods all my life. A circle of stones ringed a smoldering fire. Around it a handful of figures swayed and hummed low, their voices weaving together like threads in cloth. They were old, older than Ruth, their faces lined like the bark of cypress. Some were women, some men, all with eyes that glowed faint in the firelight. They stopped when I entered. The air grew still, heavy with judgment. One of them, a tall man with silver hair and skin dark as the earth, raised a hand. "Why do you bring her, Ruth?" "She's already called," Ruth said. "The swamp's got its claws in her. If she don't learn proper, she'll drag more than herself into the mud." The man's gaze pierced me. "Is that true, child?" My throat dried, but I forced the words out. "The swamp, it speaks. It asked for hair. It asked for ash. And now," I trembled, "and now my mistress dreams of it, screams of it. I think it's inside her," the circle murmured. One woman shook her head. "A foolish child," she hissed, "a calling without knowing. You'll bring ruin on us all." But the tall man held up his hand again. His eyes never left mine. "She has already opened the door. It cannot be closed now. Better she learns how to walk through it." They drew me into the circle. My knees buckled under the weight of their stares, but I sat where they pointed, beside the fire. The flames licked high, throwing sparks into the night. The voices rose again, humming, chanting, weaving around me. "Every life carries thread," one woman said. "Hair, nail, blood, bone, each a piece of the soul. You take it, you hold power over it. But power cuts both ways." Another leaned close, his breath warm against my ear. "The mistress is bound to you now. Her fear feeds the swamp, but your courage steers it. If you falter, the swamp will take you both." I shivered. What must I do? They handed me a small clay bowl filled with ash herbs and a scrap of red cloth. "Shape it," they said. "Give the spirit a body, a vessel to hold what words alone cannot. But remember, once given shape, it will not rest. It will hunger." My hands shook as I molded the mixture. The ash clung, the cloth tore, the herbs crumbled. Slowly under the firelight, a figure emerged, small, crude, with no face and no name. My heart thudded. It was nothing but scraps, yet it felt alive. The circle swayed, their voices rising. And now the mistress will see what she has never seen. She will not only dream, she will answer. The fire roared higher. Sparks rained. I clutched the figure, trembling. For a moment, I thought I saw its chest rise as if it breathed. When the chanting stopped, silence crushed down. The tall man leaned forward, eyes glinting. "You have called the spirits. From now on, they will not only whisper, they will speak. Through her, through you, and the house will tremble until the reckoning is complete." My breath caught. The doll, if that's what it was, felt hot in my hands. Alive, hungry. Ruth touched my shoulder, her voice soft. "A child, remember. Power is a fire warm in your hand, but it burns if you clutch too long." I nodded, but deep down I knew I would clutch it anyway. That night I returned with the crude doll hidden beneath my shawl. I thought it was only cloth and ash. But when my mistress screamed the next morning, with a voice that was not her own, I learned the spirits had truly answered. The doll was ugly, nothing more than scraps of cloth bound with ash and herbs, its shape crooked and crude. Yet when I held it, I felt its hunger. It was like clutching a living thing that had no face, no name, but a heartbeat all its own. I tucked it beneath my shawl, and though no one saw, I walked back to the quarters as if I carried fire against my skin. The swamp whispered louder now. Its voice had weight, pressing on my chest, filling my ears even when I tried to sleep. Feed it urged. Feed it hair, feed it ash. Let it breathe. I woke before dawn to the mistress's voice shrieking from the big house. At first I thought it another nightmare, but when she stormed into the kitchen later, her hair wild, her eyes ringed with shadows, I knew the spirits had touched her. She cursed at the cook, threw a pan against the wall, and when her gaze fell on me, she froze. For the first time, her eyes did not look like steel. They looked like glass about to crack. My fingers itched for the doll hidden in my bedding. The whisper brushed my ear. Now, but fear chained me still. If she found the doll, if anyone saw, my punishment would be more than lashes. It would be death. So I waited. That evening, when she called me to her chamber to comb her hair, I moved with care. The comb slid through her tangled locks, pulling loose strands that clung to my fingers. Each time I slipped them into my pocket. She noticed nothing, too lost in her raving, muttering under her breath about voices in the mirror and shadows on the wall. By the time she dismissed me, I had enough. Back in the quarters, I laid the doll on the floor. Its body looked pitiful in the flickering lamplight, but when I pressed the strands of her hair into its chest, the whole room seemed to shiver. The air grew heavy, my breath caught, and then, faint but clear, the doll sighed. I stumbled back, nearly knocking over the lamp. My hands trembled, my heart hammering. Did I imagine it? The doll lay still, stitched mouth closed, limbs limp. Yet I swore I had heard it breathe. The swamp's voice came again, stronger than ever. She is tied. Her life to the doll, to the swamp to you. Now press the ash. I swallowed hard. I still had the ash I'd scooped from the hearth, hidden in a small pouch. My fingers shook as I poured it over the doll's head. The grey powder clung to the stitches, seeping into the cloth. A shadow passed across the wall, though no one had entered. The flame of the lamp guttered low, and in that silence, a voice echoed, a woman's voice, jagged and trembling. My hands burn, a gasp. I froze. That was her voice, the mistress's voice. Yet she was far away in her chamber, not here in the quarters. My hands burn, it said again, muffled, choked. Haisa. The doll twitched. Terror surged through me. I pressed my palm against its chest, whispering a stop, stop, but the swamp laughed low, a sound like water bubbling through reeds. She feels what the doll feels. She fears what the doll fears. And you, child, you hold the doll. That night, the mistress clawed at her hands until they bled. The servants whispered of madness, of curses, of divine punishment. She shouted through the halls, demanding holy water, demanding prayers. But no preacher would come. The house reeked of something no scripture could wash away. The next day, as I served her bread, her eyes locked on mine. You, she hissed, voice cracking. You've done this. I dropped my gaze, bowing low, heart racing. She could not prove it. She had no proof. But in that moment, I saw the truth. She knew. Deep down, she knew the swamp had found her through me. That night, I could not sleep. The doll lay beside me, silent yet alive. Its crooked shape seemed to watch even without eyes. My chest ached with fear, but underneath, another feeling stirred, power. For the first time in my life, she trembled more than I did. But power is never full. It always craves more, and so did the swamp. When I returned to the pool, clutching the doll in my hands, the water rippled before I even spoke. She weakens, the voice said, but weakness is not enough. Take more hair, take a breath, bind her with ash until she cannot rise. I knelt at the water's edge, the doll heavy in my hands. If I do this, I whispered, what will happen? The water hissed, shadows curled beneath the surface. She will answer. Through her lips, through her screams, through her soul. She will answer to us. A shiver ran through me. I thought of her pale face, her trembling hands, the way she had clawed at her own skin. Did I want more? Yes. Did I fear it? More than anything. Still, I pressed the doll close. Because once you open the door to whispers, silence is no longer an option. I thought binding her hair in ash would only bring torment. But the night I heard her speak in two voices at once, I realized the spirits had gone beyond torment. They had begun to take her. Dreams are supposed to vanish at sunrise, but hers lingered like smoke that refused to clear. Each morning she staggered from her chamber, her silk nightgown wrinkled, her eyes swollen red. She spoke to no one. She ate nothing. When she looked at me, her lips trembled as though she wanted to spit curses, but feared the words would come back twisted. The other servants muttered prayers. They said she thrashed in her bed all night, crying out names no one knew. Sometimes she laughed in her sleep, high and cracked, like glass about to shatter. Other times she clawed at her sheets, tearing them to ribbons. But I knew those were not ordinary dreams. Those were the swamp's visitations. At first, I thought it was punishment enough. To see her trembling, to see her haunted, gave me a strange satisfaction. After all the years I spent bowing low, all the lashes, all the silence, now she bowed to her own nightmares. But the swamp is greedy. That night, as I clutched the doll, the voice coiled into my ear. Her dreams are doors. Push them wider. How? I whispered, my hands slick with sweat. Bind her breath, bind her voice. When she speaks, we will answer. I didn't understand, but I obeyed. I took a scrap of cloth from her laundry, still smelling of her perfume. I wound it around the doll's stitched mouth tight until no sound could escape. The air grew cold. The flame of the lamp sputtered, bending toward the doll as though drawn. My chest tightened, and for a heartbeat I could not breathe. Then it passed, and the doll lay still. The next morning she rose from bed unable to speak. Her throat was raw, her lips moved, but no sound came. The house quaked with her silence. She tried to shout orders, but only wheezes escaped. She tried to curse me, but her voice cracked to nothing. I should have pitied her. But pity was a luxury she had never given me. By nightfall, her dreams worsened. I know because I heard them. From the quarters, her screams tore through the walls. Not with her own voice, but with mine. I froze where I lay, my body stiff as wood. Her voice carried my name, but it was my tone, my pitch, as if she had swallowed my spirit whole. The other servants stared at me wide-eyed, afraid I had cast something too dark to name. I said nothing. The next day, she glared at me with hollow eyes. Her lips cracked as she mouthed. No sound, only the word. The swamp whispered again. She dreams with your tongue. Soon she will dream with your soul. Do you want this? I did not answer. My silence was answer enough. The days turned heavier. The air in the big house thickened, clinging like damp. Mirrors cracked on their own. Candles sputtered without breeze. Once the mistress collapsed at the dining table, her fork clattering to the floor, her body stiff as if some unseen hand gripped her. I clutched the doll that night, rocking back and forth, my heart thudding with terror and triumph. Was this justice? Was this revenge? Or was it something far worse? I remembered Ruth's warning. Power is fire, and fire burns all who touch it. But it was too late. The swamp had its claws in both of us. On the fifth night, the dream shifted. She no longer screamed, she spoke, but the words were not hers. I crept outside the chamber door, drawn by the low murmur. Her voice floated through the crack, hushed and strange, answering questions I could not hear. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I will. Yes, I see you. A chill ran through me. I pressed my ear against the wood. Her tone changed, deep and guttural. As she holds me, the voice rasped. She holds the doll, but I will not stay caged. My breath caught. The hair on my arms rose. She was speaking with the swamp. She was answering the spirits themselves. I stumbled back, covering my mouth to smother a cry. The doll throbbed in my hands, hot and heavy, as though it wanted to leap free. The next morning she did not rise. Her chamber door stayed shut. The butler knocked and called her name, but no reply came. When they forced the door, they found her curled on the floor, lips moving soundlessly, eyes fixed on something no one else could see. They whispered of sickness, of madness, but I knew better. She was trapped between dream and waking, her soul pulled thin as thread. That night, the swamp's voice was no longer whisper. It was command. You open the door. Now keep it open. Feed us more, or we will feed on you. I clutched the doll tight, heart pounding. My whole body shook, torn between fear and hunger. I had started this path, and the swamp did not allow turning back. I thought I had bound her with dreams. But dreams were only the beginning. I believed her nightmares were punishment enough. But when she woke speaking with voices that were not her own, I realized the swamp no longer belonged to me alone. It had claimed her too, and soon it would demand a reckoning. The doll no longer lay still. At first it was subtle. A twitch of the stitched hand, a shift of its crooked shoulder when no breeze stirred. I told myself it was only my imagination, the strain of sleepless nights, the weight of too many secrets pressing down. But each day the changes grew clearer, bolder, impossible to deny. By the seventh night it was breathing. I held it in the dark of the quarters, pressed tight against my chest. Its cloth belly rose and fell in rhythm with mine, slow and steady, like the two of us were bound together by one set of lungs. Every breath it drew seemed to drain a little more warmth from my body. My skin chilled, my teeth chattered, yet I could not put it down. The swamp whispered pleased. It feeds now. On her. On you. Both are bound in the stitching. Do not loosen it. Do not resist. But how could I not resist? My limbs ached. My heart fluttered with weakness. Each breath felt stolen, as though the doll pulled the air first and left me what scraps it did not want. During the day, the mistress grew gaunter. Her gowns hung loose, her cheeks hollowed. She wandered the halls with bare feet, muttering names that made no sense. Sometimes she laughed, sometimes she cried, sometimes both at once. The servants crossed themselves and kept their distance. None dared speak aloud what all of us knew. The house had turned sick, cursed by something we could not name. I knew, and yet I said nothing. The doll demanded more. One evening as I combed her hair, she clutched my wrist with a strength that startled me. Her nails dug into my skin. Her eyes burned with fevered light. "You've done this," she rasped, her voice ragged, though words barely scraped her throat. My lips parted to deny it, but the doll inside my pocket twitched. Her gaze snapped downward as if she felt it move. I jerked away, shoving the strands of her hair I'd collected deeper into the cloth folds. She staggered back, trembling, lips quivering as though she wanted to scream, but could not. That night, I pressed the fresh strands into the doll's chest. Its body shuddered in my hands. The stitching stretched. The cloth dampened as though soaked in sweat. When I drew my fingers back, I swore I saw them smeared with blood. "Feed it," the swamp urged. "Feed it until she breaks. My stomach twisted. And then what? What happens when she breaks? The swamp hissed, laughter bubbling through the water. Then you will see what lies beneath her skin. I could not sleep. I lay awake, clutching the doll, listening to its shallow breathing. In the distance from the mistress's chamber came muffled sobs. They echoed through the walls, rising, falling, until at last they warped into a voice that was not hers. The doll stirred. I pressed it tighter, whispering, "What are you?" Its stitched head lolled toward me. The air thickened, heavy with rain. And then, faint as mist, a voice seeped from its stitched mouth. "We are hunger." I flung it across the floor, my heart slamming. The lamp shook, shadows leaping high across the walls. The doll lay still, crooked and limp once more. But I knew what I had heard. The next morning, she collapsed in the dining room. Her lips moved, whispering the same word again and again, "Hunger, hunger, hunger," until the butler dragged her to her bed. I fled to the swamp. The voices greeted me, coiling thick around my ears. "You fear the hunger," they said. "But hunger is power. Hunger makes her weak and you strong. Feed it, and soon the house itself will bow." I sank to my knees at the water's edge. I only wanted her to suffer, I confessed. I never asked for this. The water rippled, laughing. "Child, once you call the spirits, choice is gone. The hunger chooses you. The hunger binds you, and if you deny it, it will devour you instead." I clutched my head, rocking in the mud. The thought of stopping chilled me more than going on. The hunger was not hers alone now. It was mine. That night the doll pulsed warm against my chest, its breathing louder, heavier, as if it were finally awake. When I held it, I felt my mistress's heartbeat inside its chest. Fast, faint, dying. I should have been horrified. Instead, I felt a rush of triumph. For once in my life, her fate lay in my hands. But victory tasted bitter. Because deep down, I knew the hunger would not stop with her. I thought the doll's hunger would end with her. But the night it whispered with my own voice, I realized it wanted more than just her soul. It wanted my... Servants know when something ain't right. We ain't blind. We see the cracks in the walls, hear the creaks at night, feel the chill even when the fire still burns. And in that house the cracks had grown too wide to ignore. They whispered in corners, their voices low as breath, while scrubbing floors, while hauling water, while kneeling in the garden beds. Their eyes darted to the mistress's chamber, where screams rose at midnight and silence fell at dawn. The mistress is cursed, the cook muttered one morning, her hand shaking as she kneaded dough. God himself turned his back on her. No, the butler whispered back, clutching a worn charm at his neck. Not God, the swamp. I kept my head down, pretending not to hear. Though their words twisted in my gut, they didn't know it was me, not yet. But suspicion grows like weeds, and weeds choke everything in their path. One night, as we sat in the quarters, a boy no older than 16 leaned close to me. His eyes were wide, fearful. "She calls your name in her sleep," he whispered. "Every night, she says it over and over. You hear it too, don't you?" My chest tightened. I forced a laugh, shaking my head. "Dreams are dreams, boy. Don't put meaning where there is none." But he didn't look convinced, and neither did the others. Their glances lingered, heavy with doubt. The mistress grew worse. She no longer ate. Her skin turned grey, her lips cracked. Her hair came out in clumps. She wandered barefoot through the halls, muttering to herself, sometimes laughing, sometimes weeping. When the preacher came, she spat at him. Her voice split into two, hers and something far older. He fled the house, pale as parchment, refusing to return. The servants crossed themselves, clutching charms and prayer beads, but prayers fell hollow. Fear clung to them like sweat. Fear of her, fear of the swamp, fear of me. I felt it each time I entered a room, the way their conversations cut short, the way their eyes followed my hands. Did they know about the doll? Could they feel its heartbeat under my shawl? One evening, as I drew water from the well, 2 women whispered behind me. "She ain't the same," one hissed. "Something rides her. I see it in her eyes." "Hush," the other warned. "If you speak it aloud, it might hear." The bucket slipped from my grip, splashing cold water over my skirt. I clenched my fists, biting my tongue. Their fear was a blade, sharp and dangerous. If it cut too deep, it would slice through the fragile secrecy I held. That night I returned to the doll. It lay on my bed, crooked and small, yet alive with every breath. The hunger pulsed through it, echoing in my veins. The swamp whispered, "They see you, they smell the fire on your skin, but let them fear. Fear is power, fear binds them silent." I wanted to believe it, but I knew fear also breeds betrayal. When dawn came, the cook refused to enter the mistress's chamber. "I will not step foot in that cursed place," she declared, crossing her arms. The butler muttered that perhaps the mistress had sinned too deep, that the devil himself had come to claim her. Through it all, the mistress's eyes never left me. hollow, red-rimmed, trembling. Every time I brushed past, she flinched as though my shadow burned her skin. And maybe it did. By the 10th night, whispers filled not only the quarters, but the very walls. Servants spoke of leaving, of running into the swamp rather than serving in a house that groaned with voices. But where would they go? Chains stretched farther than fences. Still, I felt the shift. They no longer feared her most. They feared me. It came to a head one storm-struck evening. Rain lashed the windows, thunder rolled, and the mistress screamed so loud it rattled the rafters. The servants gathered in the kitchen, their faces pale, their voices low. "She's dying," one said. "No," another hissed. "She's being dragged." Then all eyes turned to me. I froze in the doorway, the doll tucked beneath my shawl. Their gazes stabbed into me, heavy, accusing. The cook stepped forward, her jaw trembling. "What did you do?" The words struck like a lash. My throat dried, my chest seized. "Deny it," I told myself. "Deny it, and walk away." But the doll shifted in my arms, its heartbeat thudding against my ribs. The swamp's voice curled through my mind. "Do not deny, do not cower. They already know." My lips parted, but no words came. I turned and fled, their whispers chasing me down the hall. Witch, curse, swamp-ridden. I clutched the doll tighter, my breath ragged. Alone in my chamber, I pressed my ear against its cloth chest. The heartbeat thundered steady, strong, stronger than mine. "You will be found out," I whispered. "They will drag me into the yard, bind me to the post, burn me alive." The doll stirred, its stitched mouth twitching as if to smile. The swamp hissed, low and certain. "Not if you burn them first." I thought the servants' fear would keep them silent. But when their whispers turned to accusations, I realized the fire would not wait. It would either consume me, or I would feed it my windows. But it was the storm inside that rattled my bones. I walked the corridor with the doll pressed to my chest, its heartbeat steady, unyielding. Behind me, whispers followed like smoke. The servants kept their distance, but their eyes were knives. They no longer saw me as one of them. They saw me as the hand that held the match. And maybe they were right, for the house already smelled of fire. Not the clean burn of wood, but the acrid sting of ash. The swamp's voice wound through the rafters, seeping through every crack. "Feed us," it urged. "Feed the walls. Feed the air. Feed the air. Let the fire claim what chains could not." I tried to resist. I told myself I wanted only her, only the mistress. Not the whole house, not the others who served. But the doll pulsed hotter in my arms, burning against my skin, and I knew hunger did not choose carefully. Hunger devoured. In the mistress's chamber, the air shimmered thick as tar. She lay curled on the floor, her nails bloodied from clawing at the boards. Her lips moved ceaselessly, muttering in tongues that scraped the air raw. When she saw me, her eyes widened with a terror that almost looked like pleading. She tried to crawl backward, but her limbs shook too violently. Her mouth opened soundlessly, shaping my name. I froze. For a moment, I almost felt pity. Almost. Then the swamp whispered louder. "She chained you. She bled you. She broke you. She broke you. Burn her and be free." The doll's stitches strained in my grip. Heat poured from it, a living coal wrapped in cloth. I pressed her hair deeper into its chest. The room shuddered. The walls groaned louder, and with a splintering crack, the first board split. Smoke slithered from the seams, black and bitter. The servants screamed down the hall. Feet thundered as they ran, but the fire had already woken. Flames licked up the walls, thin as fingers at first, then thick as arms. They raced along the rafters, devouring paint, swallowing curtains. The mistress shrieked, her voice splitting into two, then three. The fire spread quick, faster than any natural flame. It leapt from one wall to another, as if guided by invisible hands. Paint bubbled, wood cracked, glass shattered, smoke poured through the halls, choking the air. The servants fled screaming into the storm. Their shadows flickered against the firelit walls as they vanished into the night. But I did not run. The doll's heat seared my palms. Its stitched mouth twitched, opening wider than cloth should allow. From it came a sound I will never forget. Not a cry, not a laugh, but a hunger-given voice. The mistress dragged herself upright, flames reflecting in her eyes. She reached for me with trembling arms, her lips cracked and bleeding. "Please," she mouthed. No sound, only the shape of the word. For the first time I hesitated. The swamp hissed furiously. "Do not falter. The fire is yours. Burn her." The flames surged higher, climbing the ceiling, raining sparks onto the floor. Her silk gown caught, fire racing up her legs, her arms, her hair. She writhed, twisting in agony, yet her eyes never left mine. I could have turned away. I could have walked out, left her to burn with the house. But something bound me there, rooted me to the spot. The doll's heartbeat pounded like a drum. Faster, louder. My own chest echoed it. My breath came ragged, my skin slick with sweat. Then I heard it, my own voice spilling from her mouth. She screamed my name, not with her voice but with mine. The sound rattled the room, rattled my bones, rattled the very fire itself. I staggered back, clutching the doll. The hunger had gone too far. It was no longer her torment alone. It was mine. The swamp laughed, its voice thundering through the walls. She is ashes. You are fire, and fire obeys nothing. The roof groaned, split, and collapsed in a roar of sparks and smoke. The house was dying, dragged down by the hunger we had unleashed. I fled into the storm, the doll clutched tight against my chest. Behind me, the mansion collapsed in flames, devoured from within. Screams echoed, then silence, then only the crackle of fire and the hiss of rain. I stood in the mud, soaked and trembling, watching the blaze consume everything. My skin burned with heat, my eyes stung with smoke. But through it all, the doll still breathed. I thought the fire would end it, that the house would burn and the hunger with it. But when I looked down and saw the doll still alive in my arms, I realized the flames had not claimed it. They had only fed it stronger. By morning, the mansion was nothing but bones. Charred beams jutted into the sky like blackened ribs. Smoke still curled from the ruins, thin and bitter, clinging to the air. The storm had washed the flames, but not the stench. It hung heavy over the land, thick with ash and something fouler, the smell of dreams that had burned but not died. The servants huddled on the edge of the clearing, their faces pale, their eyes wide. Some wept. Others stared in silence, too hollow for tears. Chains still bound their ankles, but the house that held those chains together was gone, and still they looked at me. Not with thanks, not with pity, with fear. Whispers slid from one mouth to another. Witch, curse, firebringer. Some crossed themselves, others spat in the mud. But none dared approach. I clutched the doll beneath my shawl. Its heart beat steady, stronger than ever. It should have turned to ash with the rest. Yet it lived, breathing hot against my chest, pulsing like a second heart. The swamp's voice coiled around me. Chains are broken, walls are gone. Now you are free, free. The word tasted sweet and bitter at once. My mistress was gone, the house devoured, but freedom felt heavy. My wrists still bore scars. My back still remembered the whip. Chains were more than iron. The overseer came at dawn, drawn by the smoke. He rode hard, his eyes blazing with fury when he saw the ruin. He dismounted, boots sinking in the mud, and stormed toward the servants. What happened here? He roared. No one answered. Their gazes fell to the ground. Their silence screamed louder than words. His eyes cut to me. You, he snarled. You were the last with her? My heart pounded. The doll pulsed harder, as if sensing the threat. Heat seeped through the cloth, burning my skin. She burned it. Someone whispered behind me. I spun, searching for the voice, but the crowd had already shifted, their faces a blur of fear and betrayal. The overseer's hand shot out, gripping my arm. His fingers dug deep, bruising. You'll pay for this, he spat. Every lash, every chain, till your back splits open. I gasped, struggling, but the doll writhed beneath my shawl. A low hum filled the air, vibrating against my ribs. Then it happened. The overseer cried out, clutching his chest. His knees buckled, his face twisted in agony. He collapsed in the mud, gasping like a fish on dry land. His horse reared and fled into the trees. The servants screamed, scattering back. Their whispers rose louder. Witch, devil, swamp-ridden. I stood frozen, my breath ragged, watching him writhe. His eyes bulged, veins blackening beneath his skin. He tried to speak, but blood bubbled from his lips. The doll's heartbeat thundered. My mistress's heart had been weak, fading, but his was strong, alive, and the doll was feeding. The swamp's laughter roared inside my skull. Chains are no longer yours. Chains are ours. Feed us, and none shall bind you again. The overseer gave one last shudder, then stilled. His body lay twisted in the mud, eyes wide, mouth open in a silent scream. The silence fell heavy. The servants stared at me, horror etched into their faces. None dared touch me, none dared speak. I trembled, clutching the doll. I had not willed it, not this time. The hunger had acted on its own. Ash swirled in the wind, clinging to my skin, coating my tongue. I tasted fire. I tasted chains. I tasted chains. That night we gathered near the ruins. The air was thick with smoke, the ground black with ash. Some servants prayed aloud, their voices shaking. Others cursed me under their breath. I sat apart, the doll warm in my lap. Its stitched mouth twitched, opening and closing as though it wanted to speak. Do you see now? The swamp whispered. Chains snap like twigs when the hunger feeds. You are no longer servant, you are master. But I did not feel like master. I felt hollow. Each life the doll devoured filled it stronger. Each one hollowed me weaker. My hands shook. My breath came shallow. My breath came shallow. I wondered how long before it turned on me, sinking its teeth into the soul it had clung to all along. In the distance, wolves howled. The swamp's mist rolled thick. creeping toward the ruins, curling around the broken beams. The land itself seemed to bow. I thought of the mistress's eyes in the fire pleading. I thought of the overseer's face in the mud, blackened and twisted. And I wondered, was this truly freedom, or only another chain, tighter and darker than iron? The swamp's voice whispered, softer now, almost tender, "Do not resist. Fire and ash are yours, chains are nothing. Hunger is everything." I pressed the doll to my chest, rocking back and forth as the ruins smoldered. My body trembled, my heart raced. But deep down I knew the truth. I had not broken my chains, I had only traded them. I thought the fire had freed me. But when the overseer fell to the hunger without my hand guiding it, I realized the doll had its own will, and I was the one chained to it now. The swamp had always whispered, but now it thundered. Each night since the house burned, its voice grew louder, bolder, pressing against my ears like waves crashing on stone. I no longer needed to stand at the water's edge to hear it. The swamp had followed me. It breathed in the cracks of the quarters, in the creak of the floorboards, in the shadows that clung to the walls. And always the doll pulsed with it. It no longer felt like cloth and straw, it felt like flesh. Its heartbeat stronger than mine, its breath steady, unbroken. Sometimes, in the stillness of night, I swore I heard it laugh. The servants refused to stay near me. They made circles of salt. Muttered prayers avoided my eyes. They feared the swamp had claimed me. Perhaps they were right. On the third night, I dreamed of roots. They wound around my ankles, my wrists, my throat. They pulled me down deeper, until I was buried in the swamp's belly. The water rose above me, black and endless. Yet I did not drown. Instead, the swamp filled my lungs with its breath. I woke gasping, mud on my tongue, my chest aching. When I opened my eyes, the doll sat upright beside me. Its stitched mouth stretched wide as though it had fed all night. The swamp whispered, "You are ours." I stumbled outside, the night air thick with mist. The ruins of the mansion smoldered in the distance, embers glowing faint as dying stars. I thought leaving the house would free me, but the swamp's reach was wider than walls. At the edge of the clearing, I saw shapes in the fog. Dozens of them. Men, women, children, faces I knew, faces I didn't. Some living, some long dead. All staring at me. Their mouths moved in unison, though no sound came. I clutched the doll tight, trembling. "Who are you?" I whispered. The swamp answered. "They are the ones claimed, the ones who fed us before you. Their chains rust now beneath the water. Yours will join them." I shook my head, tears burning my eyes. I never wanted this. I only wanted her to suffer. I only wanted revenge. The swamp's voice rumbled deep. "Revenge is the seed, but hunger is the root. You planted it. Now you must harvest." I fell to my knees, clutching the doll. The ground quivered beneath me, softening, sinking. Mud clung to my fingers, pulling me down. I fought, clawing at the earth, but the swamp's grip tightened. Then, from the mist, I heard her voice. The mistress, weak, broken but hers. "Release me," she begged. "Release yourself." I spun, searching, but her face was nowhere. Only mist, only shadows, only voices. The doll writhed in my arms, its stitches tearing, its cloth body swelling. I pressed it tighter, whispering, "Let me go. Please let me go." The swamp laughed. "You begged once before when chains cut your wrists." Did she listen? Did she free you? No, and neither shall we. The earth groaned and roots burst from the soil, thick and black, coiling around my legs. They pulled me toward the water's edge, dragging me closer to the swamp's dark heart. The servants saw from a distance. Their cries rose in panic, but none dared come near. Some fell to their knees praying, others fled into the trees. None would save me. The doll's mouth opened wider and wider until the stitches tore apart. From it spilled a voice not my own, not hers, but something ancient, a chorus of hunger. "Acclaim, you belong here," I screamed, thrashing, pulling against the roots. My nails tore, my skin split, but the swamp pulled harder. Water lapped at my knees, then my waist. The mist thickened, choking me. The mistress's voice rose again, desperate now. "Throw it away. Throw the doll. Throw the doll. Break the chain." I looked down at it, trembling. Its eyes, two black buttons, stared back, alive with fire. My fingers clenched tighter, unwilling to release. The swamp roared, "Do not listen. She is ashes. You are flame. The doll is you. Without it, you are nothing." The water reached my chest. My breath came shallow, my strength waned. For a heartbeat, I believed them. For a heartbeat, I thought the doll was all that kept me alive. But then I remembered the fire. I remembered the overseer's twisted face. I remembered the way the doll laughed with my voice. It was not keeping me alive. It was devouring me. With a cry, I raised it high above my head. My arms shook, my heart pounded. The swamp howled in fury, the roots tightening, cutting into my flesh, and then I threw it. The doll arced through the air, landing in the black water with a splash. At once the swamp shrieked, a roar so loud it split the night. The roots writhed, thrashing, then released me. I collapsed in the mud, gasping, coughing, my body shaking. The water rippled, boiling. The doll floated for a moment, then sank, swallowed whole by the swamp. Silence fell. The mist thinned. The voices faded. The roots slithered back beneath the soil. I lay trembling on the ground, soaked and broken, but alive. For the first time in weeks, the heartbeat I heard was only mine. But deep in the swamp, beneath the still water, something stirred. The faint sound of breathing rose once more. The swamp's claim was not broken, only buried. I thought casting the doll into the swamp would end, but as its breathing echoed from beneath the water, I realized the swamp hadn't released me. It had only hidden its claim, waiting for the moment it would rise again. The swamp went quiet after I cast the doll into its depths. Too quiet. No whispers, no laughter, no thunder rolling beneath my skin. Only silence. At first I thought it was freedom. The servants began to breathe easier. They walked past me without crossing themselves, without spitting in the mud. Some even dared to speak my name again. For a brief flicker of time I felt almost human. Almost. But freedom never lasts long in a place where chains still drag. The first night I dreamed of her, the mistress, not as she had been, silken and cruel, her hand raised with a whip, but as a shadow. Her figure stretched long and thin, her face hollow, her eyes two burning pits. She reached for me with blackened fingers, whispering words I could not understand. When I woke, the air was cold as stone, and in the corner of my chamber I saw it, a silhouette pressed against the wall. It shifted when I blinked. It moved when I turned my head. But when I lit a candle, nothing stood there. The servants said the house might be gone, but spirits lingered in ashes. I told myself it was only fear, only memory, but shadows do not breathe, and I swore this one did. The second night, I heard footsteps in the quarters, slow, dragging, uneven. I thought perhaps one of the servants was ill, wandering in pain. I rose to help, but when I opened my door, the corridor was empty. The air smelled of smoke, and at the far end of the hall, the shadow waited, taller now, broader. Its arms stretched long enough to touch both walls. I whispered a prayer I half remembered, clutching my shawl tight around me. The shadow tilted its head as though mocking the gesture. Then it melted into the floor. I did not sleep again. By the third day, the servants whispered once more, not of me, but of her. They claimed the mistress's voice lingered in the wind, calling their names. They said her shadow roamed the clearing where the house had stood, pacing among the ash. One girl swore she saw her reflection in the well, staring back with burning eyes. Another claimed she felt a hand brush her hair in the night. Fear crept back into their bones, and with fear came suspicion. If she ain't gone, one man muttered near the fire, then maybe it's because someone keeps her here. His eyes slid toward me. I felt the weight of his gaze, the weight of all their stares. I kept silent. What could I say that I had thrown the doll into the swamp, that I had tried to break free? But the swamp's claim was deeper than water. They would not believe me. Or worse, they would. That night the shadow came again. It stood at the foot of my bed, taller than ever, filling the room with its presence. I could not move, could not breathe. My body locked, my voice strangled. Then it spoke. Not with words, but with silence shaped into sound. A voice without breath, cold and empty. You thought fire would end me. You thought water would bury me. But shadows need neither flame nor flood. Shadows only need light. I wept, my body trembling. What do you want? I whispered. Its head tilted, and though it had no mouth, I knew it smiled. You, I clutched my chest, my heartbeat pounding loud enough to echo. The shadow reached, its long fingers stretching toward me. Cold washed over my skin as though the swamp itself had crept indoors. Then, as quickly as it came, it vanished. The candle by my bed flickered out. Darkness swallowed me whole. By dawn, my hair had turned streaks of white. The servants gasped when they saw me, their whispers rising once again, which, marked, claimed. I no longer denied it, I was claimed. The mistress had become shadow, and I was her tether. The swamp had not given me freedom. It had given me a haunting. Still, a spark remained in me, a spark of defiance. If she had become shadow, then perhaps I could burn even shadows to ash. That night, I walked to the ruins of the mansion. The moon glowed pale, the swamp mist curling thick. The air was heavy, the ground soft, charred beams jutted from the earth like gravestones. I stood among them and called her name. Silence answered at first. Then, slowly, the ash stirred. A figure rose, built of smoke and soot, her shape familiar yet warped. Her shadow eyes locked onto mine, and her whisper slithered through the air. You cannot rid yourself of me. You carried me in chains. You carry me still. I lifted a shard of burnt wood from the ground. clutching it like a torch. "Then I'll burn us both," I said. My voice shook, but the words held. The shadow only laughed. The sound like wind through hollow bones. "Try?" The ground trembled beneath me. The swamp hissed louder. The air thickened until it choked. I raised the torch high, ready to strike, but then I froze, for in that moment I realized the truth. The shadow was not only her. It was me, my hate, my hunger, my fire, my chain, and if I burned it, would I not burn myself? The shadow advanced, its arms stretching, its fingers curling. My breath caught, my knees buckled. And still I stood, because some chains must be faced before they can be broken. I thought the shadow was only her ghost. But as it reached for me, I realized it was also mine, and burning it might mean burning myself. The swamp did not sleep. Neither did I. Each breath I took seemed borrowed, each step weighed with the echo of chains. The servants would not meet my eyes anymore. They whispered that the mistress had returned, not in flesh but in shadow, and that I was the doorway she walked through. They weren't wrong. Every night the shadow grew bolder. I saw her reflection in the window glass, though I stood alone in the room. I heard her footsteps behind me, though my feet were still. She followed me like hunger follows famine, like smoke follows fire. But I had had enough. For too long I had been her tool, first as a slave to her cruelty, then as a vessel for her shadow. I would not live as a chain any longer, so I went back to the swamp. The moon hung pale, a thin coin in a starless sky. Mist rose from the water, curling like fingers eager to drag me under. The ground sucked at my feet, pulling me deeper with each step. Yet I walked on, the ruins of the mansion smoldering behind me, the whispers of the servants fading in the distance. I carried only a shard of charred wood in my hand, a torch unlit. Fire had begun this, fire would end it. When I reached the water's edge, I spoke aloud. "Come," the swamp answered. Mist thickened, swirling into a form. The shadow of the mistress rose from the water, taller than the cypress trees, her hollow eyes burning like embers. Her voice hissed through the air. "You dare summon me?" I trembled, but stood firm. "You summoned me first. Every lash, every chain, every night I combed your hair while you cut pieces of my soul. You made me yours. Now I break it." The shadow laughed, low and cruel. "You think you can sever what blood bound? You are mine. My shadow is your shadow. My hunger is your hunger. Strike me and you strike yourself." I lifted the torch. My hand shook, but my voice did not. "So be it." The swamp groaned. Roots erupted from the ground, writhing around my ankles, pulling me closer to the water. The shadow stretched, her arms wide as wings, her fingers reaching to close around me. I remembered the doll's weight in my hands. I remembered the fire's roar, the overseer's collapse, the laughter that was not mine. For too long I had believed I was powerless. For too long I had believed my only choice was submission or vengeance. But now I saw the truth. Power was not given, it was claimed, and I would claim mine, even if it consumed me. I struck the torch against a stone. Sparks leapt, the dry bark caught. Fire flared wild and hungry, spilling light across the swamp. The shadow recoiled shrieking. Its body wavered, thinning. The roots tightened, pulling me down. My breath hitched, but I raised the torch higher. "By fire I end you," I cried. "By fire I end us both." The flames roared, brighter, hotter. The swamp hissed, steam rising as the water boiled. The shadow writhed, its scream splitting the night. I felt it tear at me, ripping through my chest, clawing through my veins. Pain seared my body, fire and shadow locked in war. The servants heard from the quarters. Their cries rose, their prayers louder than the crickets. But none came, none dared. The shadow lunged, wrapping around me, pressing cold into my skin. For a heartbeat I saw through its eyes. I saw the mansion whole again, the mistress alive, her hand raised in command. I felt her hunger, her fury, her endless desire to rule. And then I saw myself kneeling at her feet, the doll in my hands, my own eyes hollow. "No," I growled through clenched teeth. "I will not kneel again." With the last of my strength, I thrust the torch into the water. Flames hissed. But instead of dying, they spread, racing across the swamp's surface like oil. Fire and water united, devouring everything. The shadow screamed, its body convulsing. It clawed at me, tearing skin, ripping breath. But the fire clung tighter, burning brighter. "End it," I shouted, though I didn't know if I spoke to the fire, the swamp, or myself. The shadow split once, then twice, then 100 times, shattering into shards of smoke that whirled into the night. Each shard carried a fragment of her voice, a fragment of mine. They scattered into the sky like sparks. The roots released me. I fell to my knees at the water's edge, gasping, my body scorched and trembling. The swamp went silent. The fire dimmed, sinking into the mist. For the first time in weeks, I heard no whispers, no laughter, no hunger, only the sound of my own ragged breath. I looked at my hands, blackened with soot, torn with blood, but my own, mine. The mistress was gone, the shadow shattered. But as I stared into the water, I wondered, what had I destroyed? Her, or myself? The swamp gave no answer. I thought I had ended her. I thought the swamp was silent. But when I looked into the water's reflection, I saw a shadow stir, not hers, but mine. Dawn crept slow that morning, as if the sun itself feared to rise. The sky bled pale grey, the mist heavy, and the swamp lay still as stone. I had burned her shadow. I had shattered her claim. But when I gazed into the black water, I no longer saw her. I saw me. A reflection hollow-eyed, hair streaked with white, skin marked by fire and roots. The woman staring back was not the girl who once combed her mistress's hair in silence. That girl was buried beneath ashes and whispers. What looked back at me now was someone born of fire, forged by chains, shaped by the swamp. The servants gathered at a distance, their voices hushed. They looked at me as one looks at a storm, awed, fearful, waiting for it to pass or destroy. Some whispered prayers. Others packed what little they owned, ready to flee. I could not blame them. The land itself seemed changed. Where the mansion once stood, only black earth remained. No birds sang in the trees, no crickets stirred. The swamp watched, quiet and waiting. I rose from the mud, my body aching. Each step felt heavy, but I walked to the clearing where once stood walls of brick and laughter of cruelty. Now it was nothing but ash. I knelt, scooping a handful into my palm. The grey dust sifted through my fingers, carried on the wind. This is what remains, I whispered. A voice faint but mine echoed back. And this is what begins. For the first time I understood. The swamp had claimed many before me. It would claim many after. But what I carried now was choice. I could bend, kneel, surrender, or I could stand. The servants approached slowly, their fear holding them back. One, a boy with wide eyes, dared to ask, "Is she gone?" I looked at him, at them all. Their faces worn, their bodies scarred by work and lash, their souls frayed thin by years of chains. They wanted hope, they wanted truth. "She is ash," I said. But ash feeds the soil, and soil grows new roots. They shifted uneasily, uncertain if my words promised salvation or another curse. The swamp stirred, ripples spreading across the black water. For a heartbeat, I thought I heard laughter, then silence. I knew then it was not over. Not for me. Shadows live where light exists, and as long as I lived, so would mine. That night I sat alone by the water's edge. The moon climbed high, silver and cold. The mist curled low, wrapping my ankles, whispering soft. I closed my eyes, listening. For once, no voice answered back. Only the hum of crickets, the rustle of trees. Peace, fragile, fleeting, settled on my shoulders. But peace is never forever. When I opened my eyes, the reflection in the water moved before I did. Its lips parted, though mine stayed shut. Its eyes burned faintly, a glow too dim to be fire, too sharp to be mistake. My breath caught. It leaned closer, whispering without sound. I could not hear, but I knew. The swamp had buried its hunger in me, and hunger does not sleep. Still I rose, lifting my chin. "I am not yours," I said to the water. "I am not hers. I am my own." The reflection smiled. My smile, her smile, the swamp's smile. And yet it faded, leaving the surface still once more. Behind me, dawn broke at last. The sun tore through the mist, bleeding light across the swamp. Shadows shrank. The ruins glowed gold, and the air warmed, just enough to remind me that day still follows night. The servants watched from afar. Some knelt, some wept, some turned away. But I walked past them, my steps steady. "Where do you go?" one called after me. "Forward," I answered. I did not know where the path led. Perhaps deeper into the swamp. Perhaps into another chain, another shadow. But it was mine to walk, and mine alone. The swamp would remember me. The shadows would follow me, but so would the fire I carried in my chest. And as the last dawn broke over the ashes of chains, I whispered one final truth to the wind. They bound me in life, they bound me in death. But the swamp itself could not bind me forever. The wind carried my words across the water. For a heartbeat, it sounded like laughter. For a heartbeat, it sounded like freedom. And then it was gone. I thought dawn would free me. Instead, it showed me the truth. Shadows never vanish. They wait, and someday they will rise again.